Thank you for listening to Shulchanaruchharav.com.
The Simanim that are eaten on Rosh Hashanah, what are they, and why do we eat them? So the Talmud in Tractate Hayrayos 12a records a sugya, a discussion of omens and signs that can be done to bring upon oneself good mazel and signs of success. For example, the Gemara states one who wants to go into a certain investment, into a certain business, and if he'll be successful, he can make the following siman for himself. Let him buy many chickens, have them procreate, and see if the resulting chicks are nice and fat and good, and that will be a sign if his business will be successful or not. And after it goes through a whole bunch of lists of different signs and omens, the Gemara concludes, Amar Abaye states, that once we've proven and established that omens have significance, thereby a person should be accustomed on Rosh Hashanah to eat certain foods of good omen. This Gemara that eating foods of good omen serve of significance when eaten in the beginning of the year is recorded in the Shulchanaruch in chapter 583, and there it records the list of foods brought in the Gemara as well as in additional foods as we will now mention. So the following are the list of foods recorded in the Shulchan Aruch that contain a good sign, a good omen to eat Bereish Hashata in the start of the year, which is Rosh Hashanah. The common denominator of all these foods that we will mention is that their etymological name corresponds to some message that relates to the Yom Adin, the Judgment Day, and how our enemies or prosecuting angels above should be silenced and cut off. Or that on the other side our merits should shine and increase in our favor. So let's begin the list. The Gemara and Shulchan Aruch list the following 5 foods: Kara, Rubya, Karti, Silka, and Tamri. We will go through it as is the order in the Shulchan Aruch of the Alter Rebbe in chapter 583, halacha 1. Karti is a leek. Not a leek in your faucet, but a vegetable. The leek vegetable, L-E-E-K. The reason that it is eaten is because its etymological root stems from the word kares, karti, kares, which represents that our enemies in heaven, which are the prosecuting angels, should cease to exist, should be cut off. Our next siman is the silka or tradin, which is the beet vegetable, and it is listed because it is etymologically rooted in the word salek or mistalek, which represents that may our enemies leave us alone. Our next siman is the date, the tamri or tamar, and it is eaten being that its root word is related to the word yitmu, which means to die. So once again, it's an omen that our enemies should cease to exist. And once again, as the Poskim point out, the intent here is not just on terrorists and nations which are adversaries to Israel, but referring to the prosecuting angels above in heaven. Our next siman is the kara, which is the squash. The reason it is eaten is because its root term etymologically relates to the word kaireya, which means to tear apart, and hence we eat it as an omen that may God tear apart the evil decrees, and only our merits and good decrees should remain. Hence, on the one hand, it means kaireya, to tear the bad decrees, and on the other hand, it means yikra, to read the good decrees. Our next siman is the rubya. Now, the rubya does not contain consensus as to what its vegetable is. Some say refers to a carrot, as writes the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, and so is practically the Ashkenazi widespread custom. And thus, the custom amongst European Jewry is to eat carrots or tzimis, a traditional European dish. And interestingly, we find this custom also amongst Yemenite Jewry. However, others interpret rubya to refer to a type of bean, or a red vegetable such as red cabbage. Practically, the custom in many Sephardic communities is to use as the rubya siman the cowpea legume, or chilba, which is fenugreek, a known Eastern dish eaten by many Sephardim. The reason for why it is eaten is because rubya comes from the word riboy, which means many, and it's an omen that may God look and see our increased merits and based his decision upon them, or as a tiding that we should be able to increase in our merits and thus merit to have a good judgment. The Alter Rebbe then continues and writes that based on this, it is customary to take foods as an omen which mean many in one's language, meaning that all vegetables that are etymologically rooted in the word many in your own language, in your native tongue, are to be eaten as well by the inhabitants of that native country, to represent increasing in merits, as we mentioned. So records the Alter Rebbe in 583.1 the name of the Magen Avram, and so is recorded in the Mateh Ephraim Mishnah Brura, Kaf HaChaim, and other Achreinim. To note that while we mentioned that the silka is the beet vegetable, many Sfardim are accustomed to take spinach, which is tradin, as opposed to beets, for this siman. Other simanim that we are accustomed to take, famously the apple dipped in honey. Interestingly, this siman is not recorded in the Gemara and is only recorded in Ashkenazi sources. The Tur, the Raman 583 brought in the Alter Rebbe Siddur and Shulchanaruch, but is also sourced in Kisvei Arizal and is practically a custom also among Sfardim. Nonetheless, some Sfardim, rather than dipping it in honey, they dip it in sugar, or sugar water. The Alter Rebbe continues and records, based on the Abu Daram and the Magen Avram, that it is customary to also eat fish on the night of Rosh Hashanah as a good omen to signify that we should multiply like fish. The Alter Rebbe then records in 583.4, based on the Ramah, that one is to eat rimonim, pomegranates, and we should add it should be sweet pomegranates on the night of Rosh Hashanah, as an omen that we should multiply our merits like the seeds of the rimon. This siman is not recorded in the Talmud and is likewise not recorded in the Shulchan Aruch of the Mechaber. Only the Ramah records it, and in fact some Sephardic poskim question this custom, as many rimonim are sour and therefore should specifically not be eaten, though nonetheless this is the widespread custom amongst Jewry to eat a rimon on the night of Rosh Hashanah. The next siman recorded in 583.5, based on the Mechaber, is that one is to have as a siman a head of a sheep, and one should eat from it. The Mechaber writes the head of a sheep, the Alter Rebbe writes the head of a ram, and the reason why we have it is in commemoration of the ram of Yitzchak. Now, being that it's quite difficult for most people to achieve having the head of a sheep on their table on the night of Rosh Hashanah, so instead of that we take the head of a different animal, creature, such as the head of a fish. In the words of the Alter Rebbe, he writes that first comes the head of a ram. If you don't have a ram, then the head of a sheep. If you don't have the sheep, then the head of any other living creature is valid, such as the head of a fish or a chicken. And this represents an omen that we should be l'raish v'lei l'zanav, that we should be the head and not a tail. There are other simanim that are eaten amongst other communities, but the above list follows what's recorded in the Shulchan Aruch. And now regarding the Chabad custom. What is the Chabad custom regarding the above? Are we particular to eat all these foods listed in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch that we just mentioned, or not? So what's recorded in Sefer HaMinhagim of Chabad is that we are accustomed to eat an apple dipped in honey in the beginning of the meal. We eat the rimon, and we eat from the head of a ram, or alternatively from the head of a fish, as we stated. The other simanim are not listed in Sefer HaMinhagim. It doesn't say we're not accustomed to eat them, it just doesn't mention anything about them. And thus there is no official stance recorded in substantiated Chabad literature regarding whether the Chabad tradition is to eat them or not. Or perhaps it was left to the discretion of each family of Anash to choose what to do. Practically, many families of Anash are accustomed to likewise eat the other listed simanim, as was the old European custom, such as to eat carrots, tzimis, squash, dates, etc., although some are accustomed to only eat the above three simanim that we mentioned, saying that this is indeed the Chabad tradition, that we're not particular to eat from any of the other simanim. And so has been testified by Rabbi Leibel Groner to, in his opinion, to be the Chabad tradition. Nonetheless, this matter still requires further clarification, and Amir Tashem, we will further publicize this issue as information is received by us. To note that the above only covers the list of simanim and their identity and the custom that we follow. It doesn't go into any of the detailed laws that are associated with it, and all the detailed halachas can be found in the article that corresponds to this audio recording.